So before I get going, I wanted to thank Roberta Pickerel and Hillary Gould, who put together the food and made sure the room and everything was in good shape. And so we could give them a round of applause. Thank you. This is the 10th year that we've been doing this. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since we started this. It's a unique event because it combines both business MBA students and also journalism master's students working together on teams to solve real problems with real projects that have an impact. I think over the last 10 years we've probably had over 50 different projects that we've dealt with in this class. You're going to get to hear from 4 of them today, 4 very interesting ones. So it's a unique event, and the students have worked incredibly hard. They were working in here last night. They've been working late virtually every night this week to make sure that they do their very best today. I really don't know who's going to win today. They're all really good, and it's just amazing to watch the metamorphosis over the course of the semester. I want to thank our judges, Dr. Ashley Gangloff from the Business School, Ebony Reed, professor at the Journalism School, and also the RJI Director of Innovation, and also Matt McCormick, who is the president of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much for being here today. I also want to thank our professor mentors, Scott Christensen, who's watching this somewhere in London. Also, Rick Johnson sitting up here from the Business School, Les Borgmeyer, and myself. All of us have worked with the teams. Also, the teams, each one has had a mentor at the business that they've worked at, and they'll be introducing themselves as they come forward, but I want to certainly thank them as well. So, finally, I want to thank the students for all of their hard work. And no matter how things end up today, you should all feel very, very proud of yourselves. The presentations, as you know, 20 minutes. And then you have 10 minutes of questions. We're not counting the intro from your mentor, and our first group, of course, is the Wall Street Journal, and the director of research there, Francesca Marconi, will be doing the intro there via, it's not satellite, but it's recorded. His wife just had a baby, and so he was unable to be here for this today, but one of the things that's worth noting is he was once a student in this class, in fact, the very first class that we did this, and now he's the director of research at the Wall Street Journal, so it shows, I think, the impact of this event. So, without further ado, I'll bring up the Wall Street Journal team and let them begin. And
No, I think as this works. There we go. All right.
Yes.
So we're going to start out with our introduction from our mentor.
plug in.
Yep. Hold on. Oh, why does it want to play?
No, you have the green plug in.
Yep. Hold on. Yeah. Well, it works last night. I just didn't have it in the presentation. Okay. Huh. I wonder if I can just slide this in here and play it for you all that way. There go. Huh, I don't know why the volume's not working.
You're all on the internet and everything?
Yeah,
Your volume's all the way up?
well, it doesn't show that. Yeah, it's plugged in. Oh.
Maybe if you just play with your laptop view, like the laptop sound, and then pull this mic down.
Oh, yeah, we'll try that. I think it's because the HDMI is in.
Can you unplug the HDMI?
Very talented group of students who helped us.
Are you guys? Let's try it first. We might need to adjust it.
Because it goes right into presentation mode. So. There we go. Well, thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Hello, Mizzou. This is Francesco Marconi. I'm the R&D chief at the Wall Street Journal. In this semester, I had the pleasure to work with a very talented group of students who helped us develop an innovative solution for our company. Since I can't be there today in person, I recorded this message so I can share a little bit more background on the challenge that we proposed to the group. So a little background, the journal has been growing its digital presence for the past several years by developing new products, developing new content, being really smart about our business model. But now we find ourselves at a seminal point where we are not only looking to continue to grow the audience, but also to diversify it. To bring new types of people to engage with our content, to use our products. Specifically, a segment that is very important to us is young people and students. And we want them to engage with our journalism. So the objective of this project was for the team to deliver innovative ways for the Wall Street Journal to tap into our members' ambition to drive engagement and elevate the brand to a new audience. The idea of ambition is in a way the DNA that brings together all the different people that read the journal, and we really want to elevate that as an area of opportunity when considering expansion to younger readers. The team, you'll see, focused on two deliverables. The first was to really understand young consumers, their habits, and their decisions behind engaging with the journal. And the second deliverable was to take this initial research and develop a new product that the journal could launch and test with young readers. So for the past several weeks, the group applied the design thinking methodology to try to understand the consumption needs. They conducted interviews, focus groups. They visited the Wall Street Journal newsroom in New York City. And the result is a very smart strategy, as well as a product that will help the journal grow its young readers. So I just wanted to thank everyone involved in this project, and I wanted to welcome the team. So thank you so much.
Welcome to the symposium. We are so glad that you are here. We are the Wall Street Journal team. My name is Sharnice Turner.
My name is Colin Lee.
I'm Hafsa Lodi.
My name is Anne-Marie Metzendorf.
And I'm James Wilkinson.
And as Francesco said, we were tasked by the Wall Street Journal to define this generation's ambitions, their news consumption habits, and how they interact with the Wall Street Journal. We also produced product recommendations to best serve those findings and that the journal will use to test our insights. The Wall Street Journal has been a trusted business source since 1889. It was one of the first newspapers to implement a paywall, and it is constantly reinventing itself, which is why this project is so important. We had more than 300 survey participants. We conducted 3 focus groups, and with the green light from Francesco at the Wall Street Journal, we are ready to unveil our quest toward this generation's ambitions. My team and I are about to take you on quite the trip, so buckle your seatbelt, keep hands and feet inside the vehicle, and hold all comments until the end of the presentation. I must warn you though, we had a big task. The Wall Street Journal's current average consumer is Mark. He's a 43-year-old business owner, earns more than $200,000 a year. He reads the journal daily for market insights and ways to expand his business. He's one of the 42 million digital subscribers to the journal. However, we have Lauren. She is a 22-year-old recent grad working at a PR firm in Chicago. She goes to her phone for news and consumes it in quick bits. She likes to research industry professionals so that she can one day create her own blueprint for her own success. Like many others in her generation, she has $35,000 in student loan debt. That is $5,000 less than her yearly salary. So the content of the journal doesn't really align with her interests, and so she does not subscribe. However, with the 5-step design thinking process that Francesco mentioned, we were able to design and craft solutions that best fit the need of both the client and the consumer. Now, today we will be going through our product recommendations. We will give you our timeline for that. We'll go through our project revenue projections, and then wrap up with conclusions and final thoughts. So, the foundation has been laid, your seatbelts have been fastened. We hope that you enjoy the journey. Hung will get you started on our research.
So to get a better understanding of our target audience, millennials and generations, we have done extensive secondary and primary research. MU students serve as a good representative of this group in terms of their age distribution and diverse background. So we've sent out digital survey and received over 300 responses from students in different majors like business, journalism, agriculture. We've also done straight focus group interviews with 60 participants to further understand their news consumption habits and content preferences. So through our primary and secondary research, we have found some interesting findings about this group. First of all, we found that millennials and Generation Z are multi-channel users. They constantly switching between news platforms to get information. They follow trending news on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. They also watch reviews. They listen to podcasts. They use articles on news website and interact with their community. So we want our product to be a multi-channel platform to fit their news consumption habits. Now I'm heading to Hafsa to introduce other insights.
Thanks, Hung. So, like Hung was saying, one of the insights regarding the product itself is that it has to be multi-channel in nature. Another insight was that for our audience, personalities really do matter. The voice that's giving them the news not only makes it more impactful and more believable, it makes it more trustworthy in and of itself. So in that sense, the product that we want to give to our audience has to have a distinct voice from which they're getting their content. So with regards to the 2 insights for product, one was that it must be multi-channel in nature, and the other one is that it has to have a distinct voice. Now, with regards to the content itself that our audience is looking for, we found that there's a clear delineation between ambition and goals. While goals are more short-term, they're more one and done, check, move past. This was sharply contrasted with ambition, which was found to be overarching, long-term, and aspirational in nature. And that's precisely the type of content our audience is looking for. It drives them, it pushes them to keep going past their goal, keep going on until they can reach their final ambition. Along with that, we found that our audience has a real fear of failure. They're worried that they might not achieve what they're setting out to do. But instead of just using that fear and letting it stop them from getting to where they want, they use it to propel them. So in that sense, our content must be affirmational as well. So in the sense that, yes, you might reach failure, you might get to the point where you think you can't succeed, but don't worry, we're gonna not only get you through it, we're gonna get you to your end goal, to your ambition. So again, the product itself is multi-channel in nature, and it has to have a distinct voice, whereas the content that our audience is looking for must be aspirational as well as affirmational. And with that, I'll turn this over to Anne-Marie.
Great, thank you. So I'm so excited to talk to you all about our product today and how we're going to execute on it to answer that second part of the challenge. So after analyzing our research and identifying those key insights, we found one central question that we need to answer, which is how do we create content for a young audience, for someone like Lauren from the beginning of the presentation, without alienating a core audience member like Mark. Readers like Mark make up the core of the Wall Street Journal's revenue model right now, so the last thing we want to do is push them away. We think the answer to this question lies within a brand extension, and we'll go through a couple of reasons why. First, a brand extension would allow us to create content that is tailored to young readers. Our goal is not to alter the content strategy of the Wall Street Journal, but creating a brand extension and allowing us to step away from the brand a little bit allows us to create a new content with that distinct voice that reaches the young readers without making the core readers right now feel like they aren't being heard. Next, a brand extension allows us to create a lifelong relationship with the Wall Street Journal for these young readers. In a lot of our focus groups, our participants said they're gonna subscribe to the Wall Street Journal in 10 years. It's something they plan to do, but they just don't have the budget or the content isn't relevant enough for them right now. Introducing a brand extension at a younger age allows us to create that relationship with a trustworthy publication younger and keep them as subscribers longer. Next, what we're proposing is not completely out of left field. Like Francesco said, the Wall Street Journal is doing a lot of efforts internally to hit this goal, one of them being hiring 2 Young Voices editors to create content specifically for this audience. Our last point that actually ties all of this together, it allows us to utilize the strength of the Wall Street Journal brand. So again, in our focus groups, our participants really actually respected the journal and again, plan to subscribe to it. They just can't justify doing it right now. However, we can tie that brand strength into the brand extension and utilize that strength to hit this audience more intensely than the Wall Street Journal is doing right now. So I would like to introduce our brand extension for the Wall Street Journal, The Journey. The Journey is the go-to news source for ambitious young people. It equips them to navigate their future and towards their ambitions and fills a current content gap in the media arena targeting these young readers. So why do we think this would work? Well, the brand extension model is actually not a new model in the media world. And I want to talk about 2 examples that we look to for guidance in this product. The first is NYT Cooking. So in 2014, the New York Times launched a cooking vertical using content that they have been making for decades about food and cooking. They put it out through a website and a newsletter, and within 1 year, they got 10 million users. So this model really works in attracting a new audience. The next example I want to talk about is The Lily. The Lily is a brand extension launched by the Washington Post to hit a young female audience. The Lily creates both original editorial content with its own staff and takes the award-winning journalism from the Washington Post and tweaks it a little bit to make it relevant to young women today. Just within 2 years, The Lily has over 52,000 social media followers. But I do want to say that The Lily launched with a sponsor, so they don't really face a lot of the same profitability issues as another brand extension might. However, just because they launched on social media, a website, and a newsletter, that's it. We think that this is a great guide for us to be basing our product off of. So how would this be different from the Wall Street Journal today? This is a current image grid of the Wall Street Journal, and essentially what that is a technology that they use to curate stories around one topic to make it accessible for readers. So this one's over a new tax law, something very applicable to our current audience of an older, mostly male and more affluent reader. If we applied this same storytelling model to The Journey, we would be first curating content that the Wall Street Journal is already making and putting it in one place that makes it accessible for young readers. But before I get too far into what the journey would look like, I'm going to hand it off to Sam to talk about timeline and further product models.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. So we want to take a multi-stage approach to launching the journey. We want it to ramp up over time because we know that there's a lot of other efforts going on at the Wall Street Journal right now that are focusing on this audience that we're talking about, like the Young Voices editors that Anne-Marie mentioned earlier. And we believe that by the point that we reach full implementation, we'll be able to convert those people more effectively to the Wall Street Journal. So our first stage would be focused on just creating a minimum viable product, something that can be launched easily using existing technology. The second phase is going to be focused on audience loyalty and revenue generation. The third phase, the full implementation phase, is primarily focused on converting people to full Wall Street Journal subscriptions. Our first phase, again, is not focused on monetization. It's focused on laying the groundwork for a successful publication. As a result, we're not planning on creating unique articles for the journey. We're focused on aggregating existing Wall Street Journal content, either from their archives or from the stuff that is produced under those Young Voices editors. What would be custom made are things like this email newsletter. Here you can see an example that we made of how to network when you hate networking. Each week, this newsletter would focus on a different topic. So we could do how to network when you hate networking, or it could be something like how to use personal finance to secure a path to personal independence, or how to successfully transition to new stages of your life. We would also create social media feeds because we know that that's where our audience is. So we would make sure that those were very visual because we know that's what our audience likes, things like infographics and appealing photography, and also entail direct interaction, things like polling our audience or just having open-ended conversations with the readership. There would also be a landing page using that image grid technology that Anne-Marie mentioned earlier, something that allows people to peruse the content, subscribe to the newsletter, and follow us on social media. Our benchmark in this phase is focused on getting 100,000 newsletter subscribers, something that we saw in The Skim and Morning Brew, two companies that launched newsletters early on, targeting audiences similar to our own, who successfully got to that point within a year. The second phase is focused on building audience retention and on generating revenue. At this point, we expect the journey to be a mixture of journey-exclusive content that we can put behind the Wall Street Journal paywall, so people can consume some of our stories, but at a certain point, we expect them to subscribe. But what would that journey-exclusive content be? Well, as you can see on the screen, podcasts. That's one example, failing successfully. Videos. We could have exclusive content produced for the journey, things like long-form feature stories and mobile native tappable experiences, something else that the journey is producing at present, and in-person events where people can get a chance to learn from people like themselves and to network. Our benchmark in this phase is to convert 15,000 of our readers to paid subscribers of the Wall Street Journal. Phase 3 is when the journey really steps out into the world on its own. It has its own identity, it has its own visual style, and the content efforts that we have launched in phase 2 are going to be really ramped up for this phase. So at that point, when somebody goes on the journey, most of the content that they consume on the journey is going to be produced for the journey specifically. There will still be Wall Street Journal content, but it'll be a small percentage of the whole. Our benchmark in this phase is to get 155,000 subscribers across the journey and the Wall Street Journal. This is what we envision the final stage of the journey to look like. It has its own navigation. The journey's branding is front and center, not the Wall Street Journal. And the content there would be mostly custom created for the journey, but alongside the articles would be promos for podcasts, for events, for the videos that we produce, and opportunities to sign up for the newsletter. Now I'll pass it over to James to talk about the financial side of things.
Thank you, Sam. So we've already talked about how the journey meets the challenges that the Wall Street Journal has set forward to us by delivering ambition-related content to our target audience of Gen Z and millennials. But also, we want it to be profitable. We want it to generate a solid return for the Wall Street Journal. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. First, I want to start with our subscription model, and it's a 3-tiered subscription model, starting with the newsletter. The newsletter is free. It will always be free and it'll act as the gatekeeper for our ambition-related content. We'll have the widest reach and will be the first contact we have with many members of our audience. Next is the journey itself. We know that our target audience has a lower buying power than the current Wall Street Journal subscriber. They are looking for different things, and because they're younger, they don't have the income to pay for the same type of subscription. So we want to price the journey at a lower price point at $5 a month. And finally, the Wall Street Journal subscriptions. While we think it'll be a minority, we know there are going to be Gen Z and millennials that come to the journey for the ambition-related content and realize that the Wall Street Journal has a lot of content that's actually applicable to them. So they'll be willing to pay for that full Wall Street Journal subscription. It'll contain everything the Wall Street Journal already has, as well as a subscription to the Journey content. And that is roughly $15 a month. Now let's talk about our different revenue sources. So the first revenue source is subscriptions. And we really feel like that subscription base is built on the quality of our content. We are equipping Gen Z and millennials with the tools they need to navigate their ambitions for the rest of their lives. It's a content gap currently. These Gen Z and millennials are out there looking for it and can't find it anywhere. So we're going to have content that they can't find anywhere else. Next is events. So not only do we want to have a launch event at the end of year 3 when we start the Journey brand extension, but we also want to continue to have events where ambitious young people can interact with and learn from other ambitious young people. And finally, advertising. Advertising is a much lower slice of the pie for media these days, but it's still important for us, especially with our newsletter. We're going to have a very wide reach with our newsletter, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and so being able to capitalize on advertising and sponsored content there is going to be very important. So this is some projections for our revenue, and a couple things to note here is the continued increase as the Journey gains a larger following, and then at the start of year 4, when we actually launch the brand extension, that huge uptick that you see there in the blue with revenue as our subscribers grow. Now let's talk a little bit about expenses. Someone has to create all of this ambition-related content, and so staffing is going to be incredibly important. We want to start slow in that minimum viable product stage, so when we first launch the newsletter and the social media campaign, we'll only have 2 staffers and an intern. But as we continue to add new content streams, we want to continue to staff up. As we add podcasts, as we add video, as we add exclusive content, we want to continue adding staff so that the time we launch as a brand extension, we will have 12 full-time team members and 2 interns. Next is marketing. Like I said, we know that Gen Z and millennials are out there looking for this content, but they can't find it anywhere. We have been incredibly aggressive with our marketing budget because we want them to know that the Journey is the place that they need to go. We anticipate this being digital marketing because we know that Gen Z and millennials are on their phone consuming content. And finally, web development. We're continuing to add new features to the Wall Street Journal's page and then eventually creating our own website for the Journey to live on. So we need to make sure we're investing in the web development so that that site is ready to go when we launch. So let's look at expenses, and the thing you'll notice immediately here is the 3 big spikes, and that goes with our marketing investments. So those spikes are right before we launch every stage of the journey. We want to continue to invest in marketing in order to make sure our target audience knows that the Journey is launching new content, the Journey is launching a brand extension, and now it is ready for them to consume. Now, when you put them side by side, you still notice those 3 big spikes, and so you have 3 quarters that are in the red, but it's easily offset by the revenue we're generating in every other quarter. We continue to generate more and more revenue and stay profitable anytime we're not making those big and necessary marketing investments. Now, what does this look like in terms of break even? So Sam touched on how the first stage of the project really isn't focused on generating revenue, and that's true. We're focused on building a following. So we really hover around even until February 2021 when we break even and stay in the black for good. And this all adds up to a projected just over $12 million in profit by August 2023. And we really think that this is achievable and scalable if the Wall Street Journal wants to invest even more in the Journey. So let's talk about our challenge again. So first, we were asked to understand young consumers' ambition and consumption habits, something we did through our surveys, through our focus groups, and we really worked to ideate those thoughts, the responses we got, into a potential product. And then we tackled our second challenge. What ways can Wall Street Journal own ambition as an area of coverage? And we came to the Journey, a brand extension that acts as a hub for all of the ambition-related content that Gen Z and millennials are looking for. We're really excited about the Journey. We're obviously excited that we met the challenges that the Wall Street Journal asked of us. We're equally excited that this is a profitable venture, but what we're most excited about is that we are opening an entirely new audience for the Wall Street Journal. There are 140 million Gen Zs and millennials in the US, and these are people who right now look at the Wall Street Journal and say, this doesn't apply to me. They're waiting 10, 15 years to start subscribing. And this is a huge market that will now be looking at the Wall Street Journal immediately. It's an area that they're missing, and now they will have with the journey. This is an audacious journey that we're proposing, but it's one we hope you'll join us on. Thank you.
I'm curious to know if there were certain elements of success or things that you saw when you were looking at the product from the Washington Post and other publishers, because a youth product is not new to the news field. Many newspapers had special sections as they were emerging to go online in the early 2000s. Those youth products didn't sustain and went away. Detroit, where I come from, had multiple at the Free Press and at the news. So I'm curious to know what you think will differentiate this and make it successful, and if you learned anything from looking at those that were successful that you think should definitely be a part of this product.
So some of the competitors that we were looking at, the New York Times, for example, had events like Exit Time. It had some work guides on its website. The Financial Times, Bloomberg, they have career guides portal that are still there, and BuzzFeed has content related to career advice and mission success. And those are more on the side rather than a focused venture regarding ambition specifically pertaining to Generation Z and millennials. So in that sense, yes, there have been new ventures, but there's been no overarching situation or type of idea that is targeted to this audience pertaining to ambition in and of itself. So that's, there's nothing like this on the market at all. It's a niche that's been unfilled. Some people are kind of dipping their toes into the water, but nobody's done a full-scale effort as much as the Wall Street Journal is launching to. So there haven't, to answer your question, there have been minor successes with events and such, but there haven't really been overarching brand extensions or even newsletters or newspapers pertaining to our audience.
I have a couple of questions. First one is very nuts and bolts. How much does a Wall Street Journal subscription cost?
So right now it's about, there's special and everything, it's about $168, $163 a year, so that comes down to about $15 a month with the student subscription.
Okay, so it's already $15 a month. So in your model, the upside down triangle, they can pay $15 a month, which is what they would pay anyway. It's just with additional content.
So I'm going to let James talk about the financials, but.
Yeah, so that, I'm going to switch my mic off. Yeah. so that split is really to attract those young readers who aren't going to find the value in the greater Wall Street Journal product as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I have another question that's kind of related. How are we hoping to attract this other generation? You know, the content exists. Could there be other strategic partnerships to where you can tap into that audience? Because it just existing and being available doesn't mean that people are going to know about it and flock to it. I know, James, you were in my class where we used the Wall Street Journal in a class. And so I wonder if you've thought about how to form some strategic partnerships with other organizations to help drive traffic, the generation that you're after, to this new content.
Well, I think it starts with the marketing, obviously making them aware that that content is out there. And then also it goes into what our research bore out. So we found that 70% of the surveyed audience, our target audience, is looking for ambition-related content. They're out searching for it, but they're not finding it. And so we are filling a void that is currently not filled. So by making our audience aware this content exists, and that's not
How?
just
I guess that's my question.
right. So
How?
that's the digital marketing. That's the events that we're hosting to kind of drive that in-person guerrilla marketing, and then also by filling that niche. So we know they're looking for it. Now it's there. And my might dovetail into your question a little bit. Somebody talked about making sure it has a distinct voice, right? And looking at your handout that you gave us with media trustworthiness and taking a look at as you go down to BuzzFeed, which is mainly an online platform, the trustworthiness goes down. In a market where there's so much noise in this arena, how do you make sure that this stays distinct enough to bring your target audience into it and keep the trustworthiness that the journal has built their reputation on for the lifespan of the Wall Street Journal?
I can take that one. That's okay. That's a great question, and I think one of the examples I brought up, the Lily, does a really great job of that, where they have a set staff that is creating original content. So that voice remains really consistent, but it's distinct. If you read the two articles, if you read like one that was for the Washington Post audience and one that was for the Lily audience, there is a very clear distinction, but the Lily has a very consistent voice. So hiring our own set of staff in that third stage of having an editorial team will really help with that. And then the other part is taking some of the journalism from the Wall Street Journal newsroom. So that's what, again, the Washington Post does the same thing, where they take the award-winning journalism and they rework it to make it relevant. Obviously not changing facts, but tying in recent events, things that are actually applicable to the audience right now. So if we were to do something about a new tax law, that's not something that our audience would honestly really care about that much or go out of their way to read. But reworking a piece of content like that would allow us to just really connect with that audience in a way that they understand and they care about. Yeah.
When you were thinking about how to, this follows on Ashley's question, to build that connection and build that subscriber base, did you think about or discuss partnerships with universities, or like where would the events be held at to kind of drive the subscribers?
So kind of answering your question a little bit, we were thinking, for example, of building partnerships
This is her area of expertise.